everyone, for that quick 5-minute update. It's good to be here on the set of Between Two Ferns. So what I thought I'd do, like Dom said, is just talk a little bit about, I guess, what we've been working on most recently, which I think is quite exciting. And also we'll look at, this spring tree, which is this idea that, people have loved the tree, really engaged with it, and we kind of started to build it out. We're getting close to having a lot of it done. So we thought, well, that's actually shitloads still to do on it, to be honest, but we thought we'd look a little bit further out and just talk about some of those ideas too, just because the customers are enjoying it and it's kind of a lot of fun to do. But first, I want to talk a little bit about innovation and gear sticks. I'm very serious. So I think, even talking to some people tonight, we get asked, like, how do you guys prioritize work? We have tons and tons of input from customers who talk to us, and there's a lot of banking stuff. We just have to build what we call like the table stakes features, like BPays and joint accounts and things like that. But we think it's super important to sort of clear space for innovation. Innovation, we believe, is it's really core to who we are as an organisation and what up is as a product. And innovation is hard, it's risky, you won't always succeed, you're kind of putting yourself out there. And I think it's sort of an analogy in some ways in this icon, in the manual car. Probably a lot of people here may not have ever driven a manual, right? I mean, you don't find a huge amount of them in Australia anymore. When I learned to drive, that was pretty much your only choice. At least, I think you've got a different license if you drove an auto. So you have to deal with a manual gearbox, and it was weird for me. I went to Europe not that long ago, and there's still manuals everywhere over there. I don't know what it is, but they love their manual cars. So if you rent a car, unless you pay, to several upgrades to get up to an auto, you're driving a manual car, and it's amazing how far manuals have come since back in the day. Like the car that I drove, it suggested, it said you should change up a gear or down a gear. I was stopped on a hill and it does the hill starts for you, which was the hardest part, I think. That was the scariest part of driving a manual, when you have the handbrake on and try and find that clutch black point, do all that stuff. And it even was it even gave me a score on my shifting, which clearly there was something wrong with that car, and I got my money. In my defense, it was a rental car, so I was kind of taking it to the red line. And I think this was more like an economy score rather than a technical score. But it's kind of all that stuff's really good. To me, the actual solution is really just an automatic transmission. It's that's kind of what people want. Just change the gears for me if you know how to, if you're so good at it, you can stop in one start. And I think that's kind of how it feels a lot of the time in banking. It's kind of easy to see that kind of next little iteration or improvement. We can make things lower friction, we can improve clarity, we can do that stuff, but ultimately that's sort of only moving us a little bit forward, and we're still looking for those big jumps, and hopefully some of the stuff that I talk about next will give you some faith that we can, maybe we can find some of those. So the thing I want to talk about, which we're really excited to be building, and we think this is kind of more in that vein of sort of automatic transmission, if you like, in banking. It's called split payments. And this is really the idea that when money comes in, this is something that's been on our roadmap, but when money comes in, either sort of salary or wage or money from your funding account, that you can actually just have that divvy up between savers, between your spending account and your savers. Not based on kind of setting up a bunch of recurring transfers or any of that sort of back office work, but really just based on the event of that money coming in. So this is what it kind of looks like when it's set up. This is a little scheme I came up with for managing my own money, where I get a payment in and 60% of it stays in my up account, but I have these 3 savers which I divvy it up from. And this is really cool because it's kind of foolproof. There's no amounts here. You can't stuff up if I get paid less. It's just going to act. So the way you set this up is you go to a contact, either your linked account or your salary, which you can now identify. And you just drag these sliders. I'll show you a video of how this works. So from the contact, you select the option to split the payments. Then once you enable it, this video should play. You can see you just drag these bars and it automatically works out how much will be left over if you do this. It's super seamless to use. And like you just saw me do that, it took a few seconds, and that is something traditionally that would involve all sorts of configuration and setup to do. So this is kind of in line with this idea that we can take some of the work off your hands. It's not just about giving you guys lower friction, cleaner banking. It's actually about doing some of that sort of annoying life admin work for you. And this is what it will look like in your activity feed. So rather than seeing a whole ton of transfers, you'll just see kind of a nice grouped funding split payment. You can see how much went into each of your savings. So yeah, like I said, this is about splitting salary or wages. You can set up really quickly. We kind of just have it working in 5% increments, just really for simplicity, no other real reason behind that, which just through extension means you can have actually 20 savers if you're crazy enough to try that. One of our developers did it and it worked, which is heartening. Because 5% is the minimum you can spend, so like obviously you only have 20. And we thought that we might just launch this now. I don't know, what do you guys reckon? Yeah, let's do it. So, I might bring up Sammy. This is Sammy. This is Hitsy, by the way. Do you guys like the release notes? How good are they? This is really good release notes. And this is Sammy. She's our sort of test lead, support maven. She pushes the buttons on releases. She's amazing, so thanks, Sammy. She actually, I think, she launched it before this talk, right?
25 minutes ago.
We need like a ceremonial button or something, but it's fine. Yeah, so I think that you'll probably see this in your app like tonight or something if it's not already there. So Spring Tree. So basically we've come up with about a dozen or so kind of items that we want to kind of put on the tree. Some of it's come from, I guess, that innovation kind of directive that we have, but it's all been informed really by feedback that we've got in the first year. There's been all sorts of stuff that you guys have told us that's been really interesting and surprising, and lots of amazing suggestions. There's probably nothing actually that I'll put up that wasn't almost literally a suggestion, or at least informed by sort of finding a bunch of people that are sort of asking for the same things in slightly different ways and trying to find sort of a really nice common ground. To get that happening. So Dom's stolen the thunder there, like Transferwise, international payments, it's great. Where did that come from? Was that you? Nice work. Your maps took it off, that's right. New Zealand. Get that along. Before I guess we go on to that new stuff, I did want to call out a couple of things. Like, we haven't done everything on the existing tree, and we still care about it. We're not saying it's not interesting or fun anymore. Just out of curiosity, how many people in the room, by a round of applause, I guess, are interested in joint accounts? We're definitely working on it. We want to do it really well, and hopefully we'll be doing some sort of trial stuff this year and early next year. We'll get them live. What about API? Round of applause. Is that 30%? Yeah, cool. That's also something we care about, something we're working on. Again, probably similar type of time frames. So I just wanted to say that, like, just because it hasn't been done yet doesn't mean we're not doing it or we don't care about it. But this is just about looking at sort of next little bit on. So here it is, the Spring Tree. This will be live on the website probably tomorrow, depending on the hangover. But mainly I want to focus today, tonight, just on a couple of, sort of one little section of it. I'll kind of give maybe the whole thing a bit of a once-over right at the end before the Q&A. And if you want to know more about specific stuff, you can ask us. But this is, I guess, in that theme that I've kind of been talking through tonight, which is around the automation, doing stuff for you. This idea is around making your transactional account and your savers sort of work together more seamlessly. So we get a lot of requests for kind of features like, I think, I'm happy to name names like Ubank does a suite that can kind of top up your spending account. Basically, the idea is you can maximise the money that you have in savers, earn as much interest as possible, and just keep kind of enough in your transactional account to cover your day-to-day stuff or top it up automatically. So that's one sort of ask. There's a whole bunch in that space, additional accounts people want. So we love the simplicity of up, and we want to preserve that as much as possible, while giving people as much flexibility as possible. If they're doing the barefoot investor style things, which kind of require a couple cards to do traditionally, we really want to find ways where maybe we can make that work with a single up card. So that's what I'll try and describe tonight. I mean, the thing to remember is this has not gone through the design team yet, through the developers. These are kind of raw ideas, and we'll work on the communication of them and resolving how they look and work, but hopefully this gives you a sense of where we want to take this. So I actually thought it might be interesting to, or not, we'll see, but to talk about this question, which is how do banks know how much money you have? Because I think the intuitive way we think about like money in our account and balance is kind of like, like a level, like a water cooler or a fuel tank, where it's you can just kind of look at it and see a level, somehow intuit it, and that's your balance. And it kind of empties and fills as you get paid, and that's an intuitive way to do it. But actually, the way banks do it, apologies for my illustration skills, is kind of this idea, right? Like essentially, you have two buckets of things. Debits, which is like money out of purchases on your card, and cash withdrawals and things like that, and you have credits, which is money in, typically like deposits and salary and payments from friends. And basically what you do is you look at the account from whenever it was opened, you add up all of the credits and you subtract all the debits. And that's what your balance is today. And they have ways to not have to go all the way back to time, like they sort of update a daily running balance and they can just look at the change over time. But it's just a mathematical truth that if the coffee you bought like 3 years ago for $3.50, if you hadn't bought that, your balance would be $3.50 more than it is today, which is kind of obvious but also kind of mind-blowing. And you might think, well, actually, if I had that extra $3.50, I probably just would have spent it on something anyway, which I'm happy to entertain that idea, because to me that then proves, well, so your balance actually affects your behaviour. I mean, that's almost a central premise of up, that we can actually influence your behaviour through the information we give you. So either of those things I'm happy with. But what I think is interesting is, these features we're talking about are really about not thinking so much about the balance, but actually breaking down into the transactions that are happening as we go through, and sort of manipulating either side of that to your advantage, I guess. So these two concepts are called forwarding and covering. They're kind of related. One of them's dealing with the green balls, one of them's dealing with the red balls. So forwarding is this idea we have, which is not super earth-shattering, but it's just around thinking about this problem at a lower level than just balance. And this is the idea that I can send credits to my account to savers, sort of route them over there. So this is probably unnecessarily animated, but this ball, I take that out of there, and it goes over into my saver. Trying to find a way to describe this. What this might look like, if I was a designer, is here's a payment. You can see I did this at 12:35 today. Given away from Nicole for $20. That's just come into my up account, it's payment to me, to my PayID. I might go into that, click a menu and say, I actually want to forward that money to a saver. Select a saver, 100% to one, maybe I can use that splitting tool from before. We'll still resolve this, none of this is guaranteed, but we can then send that money on to a saver, which is just kind of an interesting way to think about transferring money between accounts. It's not about going to a traditional transfer menu and sort of looking at balances. It's really about thinking about forwarding, like an email, right, that transaction on, which is kind of cool. But I think where it gets even cooler is the sort of the flip side, which is being able to use your savers to cover purchases. That's what that says. So again, I want to take the debit out of my spending account, and I want it to go into my home renovation account. So what that looks like is, here's my Bunnings warehouse purchase. I believe that was a Ryobi 1 impact driver. Sorry, Nicole, you didn't know that one. It's for 216. So I click on that and say, actually, I want to cover this purchase, right? Because a lot of the reason we have savers might be not just building up savers, but also as a way to then burn down money. So in this case, I have a home reno project, and I want to use that to actually pay for that tool, or I might want to use my wine fund to buy a nice bottle of wine. So this is about activating those savers, using them transactionally without needing to have a debit card directly for them. So I can just select that home renovation saver and then cover that purchase. And I think this is very cool, but I could just be nerding out about this a little bit. Because then on the saver, we don't just have like a transfer out for $200. We actually have the transaction detail. We can copy that transaction detail from the spending account. This is by design again. There's like a little forwarding kind of thing there. It's not important, but that then gives me a way to track that, right? Like I now can, from a home renovation project, instead of just seeing a whole bunch of transfers in and out, I can actually see copies of the transaction, which I think is cool, right? Like that's a really nice way. You can imagine that with a few more controls, this becomes really effective budgeting stuff. Like if I'm burning down the money and I'm running out, maybe I can tell me that I'm getting low or things like that. So I think the power of the system will be in all the different ways that you guys find to use it, not just in the functionality itself. Again, there's that third green block bubble there, which is automatic covers. And this again is where I think it gets better still, which is this idea that maybe instead of me manually doing that in the app, Up is smart enough to know, I can set up rules that then set that thing up to automatically do that for me. So essentially we're doing what would have been done before with like software, with like different cards for each account, like in software. And this is where we go a little bit off the rails with the creative here. But this is kind of a high level thing, hopefully this makes sense. So what I have is on the left side is the, that's my pay splitting. So in this case I'm someone that basically I want to maximise my savings balance, put 80% of my money into a cash hub, cash tank type saver. And I'm going to set up like that cover, right, like automatically, so that all purchases are covered from that saver, right? So that's kind of like that Ubank example I talked about before, which is that I basically just want to keep my balance in the saver, not on my transactional account, which is it's okay with me, right? Like I'm not the bean counter, that's fine. And maybe even the order of your savers, which I love this kind of idea that just the order that you have them on the screen can actually impact how they'll cover. So I might have two savers that both would cover all purchases, and the system will just look for the first one that matches and apply that. So when I'm not in Italy, I'm covering purchase from my savings account, but when I do go to Italy, I reorder my savers, I put that one at the top, and then all my travel expenses on that trip would come out of that saver and I could do my budgeting and stuff like that. So that's just kind of, I guess, the thing that I wanted to dive in most to tonight. So I think that's kind of the most sort of out there, different approach of everything we have on the spring tree. But do you guys want to just quickly go over there's 12 things? Do you want to go over that?
Yeah. Come on.
I'll try and wrap this up. So we do want to do Q&A, and we don't just be standing up here talking all night. I'm very thirsty. See how we go with this. So here's a couple. At the top, I'm sort of zoomed in here. This is kind of the profile section on the left. You've seen us sort of put profile pics in there. We've got, we tell you upside of age, which people really care about. Like someone recently closed and reopened an account for whatever reason, and they're like, can you please get my age from the old account to the new one? Like, here's all the proof that it was me. It's amazing. But we want to keep building on that, because I think we do have this kind of tribal-mate thing going on with Up, where people like to connect over it and share it. So the idea of a profile card is something that's more easily shareable. We're going to build Up handles pretty soon, which is kind of like your Up username. That'll be great for getting payments from people. And so that's the sort of shareable thing that'll be in profile soon. In the card space, one of the big areas of feedback we've had from people while travelling is that when you're challenged by the MasterCard SECURECODE stuff, which is like when you do an online checkout for, say, a museum ticket in Venice, it'll ask you to enter the code that we just texted you, which you may not have roaming overseas. There is a solution to that. It's called in-app SECURECODE, so you'll be able to just open the Up app and type that in or approve that purchase without the need to have SMS roaming. Attended charges is an important one. It's like someone tried to charge your card, but maybe you didn't have the funds for it, so it's probably, sometimes you get a heads up depending on who it was. Sometimes you just think, Up's not working. it didn't pay for this bill, but actually sometimes it's that you don't have the money there, or you put up a block on it, right? Like people do this all the time, including our own staff. Travel overseas, forget that they've turned international blocks on, and just think it's broken. So that's what we care about. Hopefully there's a popular one, the PayIDs for savers. So being able to directly deposit into savers through a PayID will supply for each one. Is what that PayIDs for savers is in the bottom right. Lock savers, probably one of the most surprising requests we've had repeatedly from many customers. This is like ways to keep themselves from their own money. And like, I thought as a bank, so rule number 1 is like don't lose people's money. Like rule number 2 is like give them access to that money when they want it. Apparently that's not actually the rule number 2. I don't know what it is, but people want to be protected from their savings. They want that kind of friction point there. Like sometimes friction is good, right? Like that's a good thing. So there's a few ideas we have about how we're going to do that, but stuff we'll be sharing later on, but not tonight. But that's an interesting one, and like it shows the power of, I guess, having talked to us and having a way for customers to really easily tell us what they want, what we're doing wrong, things like that. Because I don't think many of us would ever have thought of that. Obviously, international payments coming soon with Transferwise. Going to do some QR code stuff, probably in payments. Often that is surprisingly the lowest friction way to share your payment details with people that are around you physically, or request money from people. Just generate a QR code in the app, they scan it with their camera. I really love payments because it's kind of like the one area at the moment, which is kind of like multiplayer banking, right? It's like the thing you do that's sort of social. So I think that's a really interesting space for us to explore more in. Keep going. Merchant ID, I think that's sort of something we don't talk about often, but it's a huge competitive advantage we have, is this massive effort we put into identifying merchants, and that's partially you guys are powering that through giving us suggestions, telling us who the merchant is. We also have an amazing staff member, Mira, who does a ton of, she's got the camera there, she's an amazing photographer and amazing merchant curator. She does tireless work on making merchants work.
All right.
Thanks, guys. But yeah, using the location of the phone is not something we use today. It's one of the amazing things about mobile phones is they can report location. If used responsibly and transparently, I think that's an amazing thing that will help us make that system even better, particularly for like international travel and things like that. And then the custom periods and pay cycle view are kind of together, just around the idea that not everyone works in like calendar months for their insights. Some people get paid fortnightly or in the middle of the month, and supporting that both in terms of the insights and the activity, but as well as like upcoming, right? Like kind of what you want to know with upcoming is like how much do I have to pay in bills before I get paid, like if your pay's coming into up. So understanding the pay cycle view is really important for that. And yeah, another one for customers is to be able to tell us when you're going overseas in a more structured way. So that's kind of the super quick version of the screen tree. Hope there's something that's exciting there for you. Really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. We're happy to do Q&A for as long as you guys have questions. Try and get a bunch of the team up to answer them. So don't make more product ones. I've got design here, we've got developers, ops, photographers, whatever you want. So thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.